have to get rid of them. But what were the consequences of reimposing economic sanctions and having bombed the civilian infrastructure of Iraq? 3 weeks after the end of the war, the United Nations told us precisely what those consequences are. It's a document from the New York Times, March 22nd, 1991. If you read the very last paragraph, those of you, and I'll read it to you for those that don't have it, the UN told us, quote, "It is unmistakable that the Iraqi people may soon face a further imminent catastrophe, which could include epidemic and famine, if massive life-supporting needs are not rapidly met. Time is short." That's the UN telling us what conditions were like in Iraq 3 weeks after the war, epidemic and famine. What was our position? Quote, this is the reporter speaking of the U.S. administration's view and position about sanctions. The United States has argued against any premature relaxation of the economic sanctions in the belief that by making life uncomfortable for the Iraqi people, it will eventually encourage them to remove President Saddam Hussein from power. Have you got it? We are publicly saying that we intend to use epidemic and famine against a civilian population as tools of our foreign policy in order to get what we want. And what we want is regime change. What we want is our guy in Baghdad who will give us control of the oil. Okay? That's not very nice. That's not very pretty. And it needs to be said, because if we don't know what we are doing, the rest of the world does. I want to give you another handout. This is more.
This picture, taken in 2001 by our newspaper partner, the Seattle PI, shows an Iraqi man crying over his daughter at a Baghdad hospital. According to the international children's group UNICEF, somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 Iraqi children under 5 die every month. Nearly 500,000 dead since crippling economic sanctions were leveled against Iraq in 1990.
Why should it ever be a crime to bring medicines there?
Bert Sachs has long believed the sanctions hurt the people of Iraq instead of Saddam Hussein. So he's made numerous trips to Iraq over the objections of the U.S. government to deliver medicine. And he thinks all those deaths from sanctions-related diseases, according to the UN, are the reason the U.S. military is now getting an unexpected cold shoulder from many Iraqis.
We want them to believe that we care about them after doing this, to punish Saddam, we said. I think the people there are saying to themselves, we may not like Saddam, but you're invaders, and we're going to fight you, because you're invading our country.
If I were Saddam Hussein,
the U.S. really cares.
And we say it's not our fault, it's his fault.
But Bert Sachs fears 12 years of sanctions and the deaths of 500,000 children may be too much to overcome.
And imagine your kid being held hostage and dying for lack of medicines or food because somebody doesn't like what President Bush does. How would you feel? You know, here's a man who knows.
Bert Sachs insists